of the quiet fears many people carry in midlife is the feeling that time is running out, that by a certain age we should already know who we are, what our purpose is, and what our life is supposed to look like. And if we haven't figured it out by then, somehow we're behind. We're behind our friends, we're behind society, we're behind life itself. But what if the timeline was never real in the first place? What if the idea that life must unfold on a schedule is one of the biggest lies of modern culture? Hi, I'm Elisa, the Rebel Crone. If these types of conversations about midlife, purpose, and reclaiming yourself resonate with you, you are always welcome here on the Rebel Crone. In this video, I want to talk to you about purpose, time, and why so many women start discovering their real direction much later in life. Growing up in modern society, we are taught that life follows a timeline. It sounds simple enough. By 25, you should know who you are. By 30, you should have a career. By 40, you should be established and hopefully married. By 60, you should slow down and retire. Now, this timeline creates enormous pressure because the truth is, it's completely made up. Did you know that before the 1800s, most humans did not live by a strict life schedule? People did not think in terms of career paths, retirement ages, and figuring out life by 30. Most people lived in agrarian societies where life flowed with seasons, family roles, and survival needs. Then the Industrial Revolution arrived in the late 1700s through the 1800s. With the advent of production to make life easier, factories required something different. They needed predictable workers, predictable productivity, and predictable life cycles. So society adjusted and reorganized around a new and improved framework. In that framework, childhood meant schooling, young adulthood was the labor pool, midlife was peak productivity, and old age was retirement and decline. You're out of the workforce. This wasn't spiritual, and it certainly wasn't natural. This was economic engineering. Human lives were reorganized to serve industrial systems. Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 is not some inherent cosmic schedule. It's factory scheduling applied to human beings. The timeline we think is natural is actually industrial scheduling applied to human lives. Public schooling systems developed in the 1800s and helped to reinforce this structure. Schools were designed to produce obedient workers, punctual citizens, people comfortable with hierarchy. So schools started to mimic factory systems by introducing bells, rigid schedules, age-based cohorts, and standardized progress. As children, we were quietly trained to move through life in stages. You go to school, you graduate, you have your career, you get married, and you retire. And if your life deviates from that pattern, you start to feel like you're behind, that something is wrong with you. After World War II, Western societies created the ideal life path. 20s, your career established, 30s, your marriage and children, 40s, financial stability, 50s, peak career, and 60s, once again, retirement. For a short period of time, this system actually worked. Jobs were stable and available. Pensions existed, housing was affordable, gender roles were rigid. But that world no longer exists. Yet the psychological timeline remains. The social and economic engineering are still in play. So the result is millions of people feel like failures for not fitting into a system that is already obsolete. So here's my interpretation. A rigid life timeline is extremely useful for maintaining social order because if people believe that they must succeed early because time is running out and eventually they're going to be too old to change, then they are less likely to challenge the systems. They are inclined to stay inside predictable lanes. In other words, the belief that time is running out is one of the most effective forms of social control ever invented because fear of time creates compliance, urgency, and self-doubt. And people who feel behind rarely rebel. What's interesting is that historically many cultures believe something very different. In many traditions, the first half of life was about survival and learning. The second half was about wisdom and purpose. Carl Jung wrote about this. He said, the afternoon of life must have a different program than the morning of life. In other words, you cannot discover your real purpose early because early life is about building self. Purpose often emerges after years of experiences, once we have lived enough to understand who we really are. And that usually happens in midlife. The idea that life must be figured out early isn't wisdom. It's industrial scheduling applied to human beings. For many women, the first half of life isn't about discovering purpose. It's about surviving the roles we were given. In youth and early adulthood, we are busy adapting. We're busy pleasing. We're busy building security, surviving relationships, raising children, proving ourselves. There is little space for authenticity and discovering who we really, really, truly are. And then something interesting happens in the second half of life. Our hormonal patterns change. Expectations start falling away. Social pressures weaken. Children are grown and gone. The old identity begins to loosen. Suddenly, deeper questions emerge. Who am I really? What do I actually want? And what truly matters now? What society calls a midlife crisis is often the time when a woman begins reclaiming her life. She begins reclaiming herself. Purpose isn't something you hunt down. It's not something you chase, and it certainly doesn't come from following a preset timeline. Purpose reveals itself when we stop living as the person we were taught to be. Purpose comes when you are ready to receive it, when your life becomes aligned with truth. And the truth is, time is not our enemy. Time is what slowly removes the illusions about who we thought we had to be. And when those illusions fall away, purpose often appears exactly when it was meant to. So if you are just now asking those questions, you are right on time. If just now you are discovering who you are and what you're meant to do, you're not late to your life. You are arriving exactly when the old roles loosen enough for you to finally become yourself.